Hey everyone, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard the Lighthouse Within with Ambar Paloma, but you can also call me Amber. We're on the ultimate voyage to build resilience, and I am really excited because today we are anchoring the ship and starting a mini-series. Yes, the other day I was watching a video and I got so excited by what I learned that I was up until 5 in the morning researching it and writing this episode, which is why for the next few weeks, I will be dedicating this podcast to convincing you to stop pursuing happiness. Before we get started, I want to remind you that you can always find the life jacket for this episode on my website. Each life jacket is what I call the accompanying resources and reflections that help you heal, reflect, and grow on your journey to resilience. If the waves of life ever get extra turbulent, your life jacket will help you stay afloat. Okay, so back to the main point. What had me up until 5 in the morning? Y'all, I'm not even going to lie to you. I am not going to act demure or cutesy. I am a giant nerd, okay? So it honestly doesn't take that much to pique my curiosity and keep me up all night. But on this night, I was watching a video, like I said, and in the video, they said that the word happiness is related to the word happening. Me, being a total word nerd, was like, ooh, really? Let me go see what that word is that they're both related to. Sure enough, they're both related to the word hap, which comes from Middle English and means luck or to occur. And so in the video, they were talking about how happiness is a reflection of something happening to you. And so if that thing never happens, you don't get happiness. And I was like, huh? So sure enough, I looked up happiness and I found on Embark Behavioral Health that happiness is a feeling, just like sadness, anger, or disappointment. It's based on external factors, and it's a reflection of something happening to you. And it suddenly clicked for me why we have that famous phrase, happiness is fleeting. Because if happiness is based on something happening and that thing never happens, then you wouldn't get the happiness. But even if it does happen, the impact of any event naturally fades over time. So naturally, so would the happiness that you get from that event. Psychologist Itai Ibsen said another reason why happiness is fleeting is because the first dimension of happiness is hedonistic. Hedonism is the pursuit of pleasure, of sensual self-indulgence. That's why the first bite you take of a rich, decadent, delicious chocolate cake is euphoric. But the more and more you eat of it, the less you want it. You might even get to a point where you've had so much of this chocolate cake, you don't ever want to see it again in your life. And it made me think back to last week's episode on building your emotional first aid kit, when we were talking about false remedies and how so many of us turn to them as a way to manage our emotions. False remedies like alcohol, casual sex, impulse shopping, doom scrolling, comfort eating. These are all hedonistic pleasures. So it's no wonder we get a hit of happiness from indulging in them, but the impact of that happiness quickly fades. It's fleeting. And so we're left in this loop where we're constantly chasing the feeling. But every time we're going to need it in bigger quantities to get that same feeling of happiness from it. I started reflecting on popular phrases in society like live your best life and become your best self. And a lot of the ways that we define this best is based on hedonistic pleasures or the pursuit of external status symbols. We'll make comments like, I'll be happy when I finally get that job. I'll be happy when I finally have that car. I'll be happy when I finally get married. I'll be happy when I finally have those friends. I'll be happy when I finally get into a relationship. I'll be happy when I get the latest tech. I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when. And when we finally get happiness, we'll hold on to it so tight, sometimes even to our detriment, because we're so afraid of happiness leaving. But that's exactly what your emotions do. Like a revolving door, they shift around based on your circumstances. That's just the human experience. There's actually a quote by the famous psychologist Carl Jung that says, the more you deliberately seek happiness, the more sure you are not to find it. So instead of pursuing happiness, I want to invite you to pursue joy. Jane Shine, the host of Positively Jane, defines happiness as a feeling based on your circumstances. but joy as an attitude that defies your circumstances. What I love about this mindset shift from pursuing happiness to pursuing joy is that it gives you back your power. When you pursue happiness, you're pursuing something that can come whenever and leave whenever. This might make you feel powerless. But when you pursue joy, you are pursuing a mindset that is entirely in your control. You can put in the work and see the improvements and growth over time. This feels powerful. So this, my friends, is where we are anchoring this ship for the next few weeks, because you can totally become a joyful person, no matter where you're starting from. This is coming from someone who suffered depression so severe, I did not want to be alive anymore. You won't believe how pessimistic and cynical I used to be. So I can say this with 100% certainty that no matter where you're starting from, you can become a joyful person. Let me give you another reason why it's worth focusing on your mindset more than focusing on the outcome of happiness. In the book Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about why we struggle so much to let go of the habits that we desperately want to get rid of. He says we're often focusing on changing the wrong things, and he describes 3 layers of habit change. The first layer is all about changing your outcomes. This is the level at which most of us set our goals. We're talking about concrete results like lose weight, finish that book, or run a marathon. The second and deeper layer is about changing your process. This is all about changing your habits, and most of the habits that we build are at this level. I'm talking about things like trying a new routine at the gym, starting a new meditation practice, or starting a new reading regimen. The third and deepest layer is about your identity. It's about your mindsets, your beliefs, your assumptions, your judgments of yourself and of others. This is where your worldview is held. Now, no level is necessarily more important than the other, but when we just focus on our outcome or we just focus on our habits, we eventually self-sabotage it because of our mindset and our identity. He gives us the example of a smoker who wants to quit smoking. But every time someone offers that smoker a cigarette, the smoker says, "Oh, no, thank you. I'm trying to quit." This is something like saying, "I'm a smoker. I identify as a smoker, but I'm trying not to." It is very different if someone, for example, offers me a cigarette, because I absolutely detest the smell of cigarette smoke, and I do not smoke. So if someone offers me a cigarette, I will say something like, "No, I don't smoke, and can you please smoke that away from me or blow it in the opposite direction? I really don't like the smell and I don't want it stuck in my hair." They will probably never offer me a cigarette again. He said the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. It's one thing to say, "I'm the type of person who wants this," and it's another thing to say, "I'm the type of person who is this." I'll give you an example. Last year, I was trying to save more money by eating at home more often. But I had this major problem. My identity was that I loved eating out. I loved eating out and I loved eating out with friends. So every time I would try to stop or slow down or diminish the amount of times that I ate out, I would say things like, "I love eating out, but I'm trying to save money." And eventually I would self-sabotage my efforts. But this year, I changed my mindset. I changed my identity. Instead of what I used to say, I started saying, "I eat at home 80% of the time." I started saying things like, "I only eat out with friends on weekends." And I prefer my home-cooked meals. They tend to be tastier, more nutritionally balanced, and cheaper to make. Let's think about this in the context of becoming a more joyful person. I used to heavily identify with being anxious. I would constantly make comments like, "I'm an anxious person. I'm anxious in my relationships. I'm anxious at work. I need to do XYZ because I'm anxious. And if I don't do XYZ, then my anxiety is going to flare up. And if my anxiety will flare up, I'll probably have a panic attack." And I'm running out of breath even thinking about it. So guess what? Anytime I would have a setback, I would respond from my anxiety. My identity mirrored my habits, and my habits mirrored my identity. A series of things happened over the past year and a half that made me identify with my anxiety less and less. And when I experienced a setback earlier this year, I didn't respond from my anxiety anymore because I no longer identified with it. Instead, I started to identify with being emotionally intelligent. I started to identify with being resilient, with being joyful, with someone who had gone through hard things and had made it through. Instead of spinning stories of my victimhood, I reached out for support. Instead of turning to my false remedy of comfort eating, I went to the gym, ate nutritious meals, and even lost 30 pounds. Instead of giving up on the things that made me happy, I took the opportunity to dream new dreams. And I want to invite you to think about your identity. Who do you want to be? And I know that can be a scary question. I remember being in the throes of depression and anxiety and feeling like I would never not feel depressed and anxious. I thought this is just my life. I guess this is who I'm going to have to be for the rest of my life. I really thought that. But I want you to know you do not have to identify with the circumstances that were dealt to you. You do not have to identify with your generational trauma, your failed relationships, the times you felt lost, the times you felt taken advantage of. Those are a part of you, yes, but they are not all of you. I am inviting you to claim your own identity. I am inviting you to claim the joy that defies your circumstances. So from this day forward, tell me, who are you? There's so many places we can start this conversation on joy. And honestly, I had a hard time picking where to start, which is why we're doing a whole series. But inspired by Mr. James Clear, I thought we could get started with a habit we all have control over. Let's talk about complaining. Complaining in the simplest terms is just an expression of dissatisfaction or annoyance with something. And I don't think it's bad in moderation. Venting to a friend about a legitimate issue you're facing is a way to release some of the negative energy, and it can give you some perspective on what you should fix, or possibly even that it's not that bad. I remember 2 years ago, I was working at this one agency that was so disorganized, really nice people, but so disorganized. And it was driving me up a wall. I would complain about them day in, day out. One day, a friend of mine asked me like, hey, what's going on with that job? And I told her, oh yeah, I quit. And she said, oh my God, why would happen? Thinking, wow, they finally did something so crazy. They drove her to quit. And I said, oh no, they didn't do anything new. I was just tired of hearing myself complain about it. So how does complaining keep you from cultivating joy? What does it cost us? According to a Stanford University study, complaining or even being complained to for 30 minutes or more can shrink your brain, specifically your hippocampus, which ironically is in charge of your memory, your problem-solving skills, and your emotions. According to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, trauma specialist and the author of The Body Keeps the Score, it can also rewire your brain because neurons that fire together wire together. When we repeat certain behaviors like complaining, a circuit fires in your brain, and it can become a default setting. In other words, the more you turn to a specific action when you have a certain problem, the more that action will become a habit whenever you are faced with that same problem. Complaining also triggers the release of cortisol in your body, which also ironically is called the stress hormone. And cortisol affects every organ in your body. And it's not just your own complaining. The book also talks about how, thanks to a process called mirror neurons, when you are exposed to someone who is very critical, very negative, or can't stop complaining, it causes your brain to get rewired too and releases cortisol in your body as well. Which probably explains a lot of our childhoods or why toxic relationships can have such a lasting impact on us. Those who have experienced trauma are even more susceptible to this. Part of healing is actually undoing the effects of this on your brain. And thanks to neuroplasticity, you actually can. So we've all heard about the effects of secondhand smoking, but folks, you also need to watch out for secondhand complaining and negativity. And I don't know about you, but I have definitely come home from hanging out with a chronic complainer, and I can just feel their negative energy just hanging over me. And the more I heal, the more I grow, the more I live a peaceful life, the more energetic friction I feel when I meet people like this. It's like when you've been eating really clean and then one day you just decide to binge and have a pizza and brownies and Coke, and then afterwards your body just feels horrible. But if you're always eating like that, you don't notice the difference. This is the irony of our false remedies, because we usually turn to complaining because we're stressed. But It actually just makes us more stressed, diminishes our ability to solve the problem, affects our physical health, and stresses out the people around us. So some proud negative thinkers might think you're naive for seeing the bright side in a situation and that they're just being realistic. But science has literally poured thousands of research dollars into proving that they are not fixing anything. And in fact, they're making it a lot worse. So we're just going to hope that they find their way in this life and wish them well. But in the meantime, stay woke, my friend. So how can we fix this? You know I would never leave you hanging. Going back to the words of James Clear, I think a lot of us think that being optimistic is naive. And we have this world's view that sees being pessimistic, cynical, or skeptical as being real or realistic. I think there's another identity issue here, a societal belief system. Remember when I said last episode that some of our false remedies are so normalized, we think that's what you're supposed to do? Yes, well, a lot of us get together with our friends, our family, and our coworker, and we complain and we gossip, and we call this bonding. And two of the areas where we're most likely to complain about, or where we think you're supposed to complain about these things, is work and your relationships. Now, I want to be clear. I do think it's okay to vent in moderation about legitimate issues you're facing, but pay attention to your conversation. How much time are you spending talking about things you either can fix or have no control over? This week's life jacket will break all of this down and more, and will give you an opportunity to reflect on those things. So please go ahead and check it out on my website or sign up for my newsletter, Message in a Bottle. I will send you reflections, worksheets, and alerts of new episodes directly to your inbox. Going back to the intuition episode, when I said, if you have a hard time listening to your intuition, listen to your body. Your body always knows, and that includes your mouth, okay? Listen to the words coming out of your mouth. What comes out of your mouth is often a reflection of what is in your heart. And if you cannot stop complaining about a certain situation, if you have become a pro, an Olympic gold medalist at finding the negative in any situation, your heart is trying to tell you something through the words coming out of your mouth. Are you listening? When we find ourselves complaining about the same situation over and over again, we really only have one of two options. You either need to change the situation or change your attitude. And sometimes changing the situation looks like getting rid of it, okay? I realized that company was never going to change, and the amount of work it would take to change them would be beyond what I was willing to put up with. And let me tell you how I have not thought about them twice since I quit. So we addressed the deepest layer, our identity. Now let's talk about that second middle layer, our habits, our process. If your process used to be complaining, I want you to replace it with something else, and it's called gratitude. And I know, as a recovered pessimist, I know that nothing about being in a shitty situation makes you want to be grateful. But this isn't some toxic positivity, it could be worse message. Gratitude is not about overshadowing the difficulty of the situation. It's about appreciating what you do have and how what you do have can help you get through the difficult situation. When all you focus on is what you lack, you amplify the negative aspects of whatever you're experiencing. And we already talked about how that literally makes it worse on our brain to fix whatever it is we're going through. So don't fall into that trap. The father of American psychology, William James, once said, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." When you focus on what you have, you see that you are abundant in the things that can help you get through the storm or to unlock the next level. Remember when we talked about how a resilient person is resourceful, solution-oriented, and optimistic. Having a routine of gratitude will help you develop these aspects of being resilient. Let me give you an analogy. We all know about the debate of seeing the glass half empty versus half full. Now let's see what that would look like if you pulled up to a restaurant with a friend. Let's call this friend the chronic complainer. Pretend you just sat down with your friend and a server comes by really rushed and lays down 2 glasses of water, neither of which is full. Your friend, the chronic complainer, looks over at the table next to you and notices that they have all been given full glasses of water. The audacity, she said, this is ridiculous. The service here is horrible. Look at the people at that table. It's so much easier for them. I am so thirsty. I am parched, she said, and the people over there have it much easier than me. They have a full glass of water, and they can drink that full glass of water and quench their thirst. She proceeds to make her mouth even drier by continuing to complain about how much easier it is for the people over at that table. You know what she says? I'm not even going to bother. She huffs and she puffs and she crosses her arms and she says, my mouth is so dry now, it would be uncomfortable for me to eat. You know what? I don't even want to eat anymore. Let's just go home. I don't even want dinner. I'm just going to go straight to bed. You also have just a half glass of water, but you look down and you decide, well, I don't have a full glass of water, but I could drink the water that I do have, while I raise my hand, call over the waiter, and ask for a full glass of water. This is not about glasses of water. We can all relate to being in a situation that feels unfair. We can all relate to being in a situation where it feels like somebody else has an advantage or they're so much farther ahead of us, so why should I even bother? It's so much easier for those people to be happy, so why should I bother being happy? It's so much easier for those people to start that business, so why should I start that business? It's so much easier for that person to get into a relationship or that person over there to get a job, so why should I even bother? And you know what? I'm depressed, but it's so much easier for those people over there to overcome their depression. Their problems are less bad than mine. When we focus on what we lack, we can get trapped into complaining and not solving the problem. We literally saw what happens in your brain when you get stuck in this loop. It actually makes it harder for you to solve the problem. But when you focus on what you do have, you usually realize that you have enough to get to the next step. And maybe once you get to that next step, you'll have more things available to you to get to the step after that. The more I think about it, the more I'm seeing complaining and anxiety got to be like besties. They go together real bad because complaining will really have you coming up with some injustices that don't even exist. No one has better conspiracy theories about how the world is out to get them like a chronic complainer. So, in the same way that complaining can affect your brain, gratitude can actually improve your brain. According to a study published in the Journal of Happiness Studies, practicing gratitude 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 6 weeks can greatly improve your mental health. This same study even showed that gratitude had more effect on your mental well-being than self-kindness did. And I feel like self-love, we all know self-love is really important. So, according to this study, gratitude can help you even more. Gratitude can lower symptoms of depression, stress, and anxiety. And it also has great benefits for your body because it can improve your heart health and help you sleep better at night. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who survived cancer and apartheid in South Africa, said, even while you're being poked and prodded, you can be grateful for the compassion of your nurse and your access to care. You see, a joyful mindset is on one level, and the emotions that come and go as a natural process of life are on another. That's why they can coexist. And I invite you to spread the effects of gratitude to others. Tell people you're grateful for the things that they did. Hand out compliments like they're candy. It'll probably make someone's day, and then they can spread around the good energy too. This year, I went through a breakup and I was devastated, but I decided to start a gratitude practice as one of my coping mechanisms. And I'm not going to lie to you, it was a struggle at first, okay? I was trying my best, but at first it was really basic things like, okay, well, got to come up with things I'm grateful for. I guess I'm grateful for a roof over my head. I'm grateful I have food on my table. I'm grateful I have a job, and I'm grateful I have health. And then I was like, wait, that's actually that's a lot of things. These are really major things to have. So I kept going. I turned it into this little game where I would walk around the world and try to come up with things I was rich in. And I would make these statements like, I'm so rich in blank. And so on my way to the gym, maybe I would walk outside and I would say, oh, I'm so rich in bright blue skies and purple flowers on the trees. I would take the bus and I'd say something like, oh, I'm so rich in smiles from strangers. I'd go out to dinner with my friends and I'd say, oh, I'm so rich in good company, in great food, and stimulating conversation. And these are all small little things if you think about it. But all these small little things are the biggest things. When you start to notice them, you realize how much beauty you have in your day. Then it got bigger. I started saying, oh, I'm so grateful I'm getting so much time to spend with my mom this year. I never really felt close to her growing up, and part of me thought I never would, but looks like maybe I'm getting the chance to. I said, oh, I'm so grateful for all of my friends who have been checking up on me throughout this breakup. All the way from Spain to Los Angeles, people have called me, texted me, showed up for me. I was like, wow, I didn't always used to have such a great support network, but now I do. And I said, oh, I'm so grateful for my job that gives me the ability to travel the world. I used to remember being young and I would see my friends going on family trips, and my family never had the money to travel like that. And it was always something I wanted to do. And I was like, wow, look how much my life has changed. I used to dream about this. Then I was like, wait, I used to dream about this. I remember being younger, wondering things like, will I ever be financially stable? Will I ever make it out of depression? Will I ever have good friends? And a few years later, I dreamed about a life I would love living. And I was so focused on what I didn't have yet. I was so focused on what I had lost that I almost missed out on realizing that I was living the very life I had dreamed about. And again, this isn't about overshadowing the pain of life. Life is hard sometimes. That's just a reality. I still experience a natural rotation of sadness, of joy, of anger, of disappointment. That's normal, but my joyful mindset carries me through it all. Gratitude has become such a part of my life that the other day I gave thanks because someone made me so angry, so ridiculously angry, that it gave me the opportunity to honor how I was feeling, be honest with somebody else, stand firmly on what I wanted and needed from them, and set the necessary boundaries. Complaining would have had me stuck on how mean they were. It might have had me stuck and reaching into my bag of old victim stories where I would tell myself something like, this only happens to me because I'm too nice and people always take advantage of me. Instead, gratitude shifted my mindset, and I saw their behavior as only being a reflection of them, not of me. And I saw it as an opportunity to prove my growth in setting boundaries. And I was actually proud of myself for how I had handled that situation. And instead of dwelling on it more than I needed to, I just took it for what it was and then I let it go. Here's another one for my friends who struggle with anxiety or who struggle with feeling responsible for other people's emotions. I used to struggle with this so bad. Even when I hadn't done anything to cause somebody else's emotions, I still felt like it was my responsibility to fix their emotions. If you have experienced trauma, there's actually something that might be going on between your amygdala and your frontal lobe that is causing you to perceive danger where it doesn't exist. In the book, The Body Keeps the Score, he says that one of the ways we can alleviate this is through top-down regulation activities that improve mindfulness, like yoga and meditation. But guess what? Gratitude can also be a form of mindfulness because it roots you in today and being present. It roots you in what you currently have and what is currently happening in order for you to be grateful for it. Not what you used to have or what you hope you will have, but in the abundance of today. And I think that duality of being able to notice I had a hard day, but it still had beauty in it, is the same thing you need when you're saying, I'm going through a hard season in my life, but it does not define me. Life is never black and white. It's always shades of gray, and gratitude can help you notice it. So here are 4 quick ways to practice gratitude throughout the day. The first thing is the most common one, and that would be at night, every night you can make a list of 10 things that you are grateful for. You can include small things like purple flowers in the trees, big things like having a good belly laugh with friends, or everyday things like having a safe place to sleep. The second way you can express gratitude is by doing the I'm rich statements. Find 3 ways that you are rich throughout the day. The more common, the better. It could be things like, I'm so rich in delicious cups of coffee. I'm so rich in finding amazing parking spots. The more you notice the small things about life, the more joy you will have. The third way is through your senses. Mindfulness is all about being present in your body. So use your senses to be grateful. Say something you're grateful for that you touched, that you smelled, that you tasted, that you heard, and that you saw throughout the day. And finally, get specific when you say thank you. It's one thing to say, hey, thanks. And it's another thing to say, thank you so much for coming to help me at the last minute. You're such a good friend, and I'm lucky that I have someone I can rely on like you. Plus, I like this one because it spreads the good energy around. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe so that you always know when a new episode drops. You can also sign up for my newsletter, Message in a Bottle, to get alerts of new episodes along with reflections, worksheets, and empowering messages. As always, I have a final message for you. So if you would like to receive your message, I invite you to place your hand over your heart, and if you'd like, you can also close your eyes. Be the light in the darkness, the stars in the night, the lighthouse in the storm. Let your actions speak so much of your joy, your kindness, your integrity, and your strength that when others look at you, they look to you. Those who are filled with darkness will try to dim your light. Some may even try to steal it, but still you shine. And those who seek to find the spark to light their own joy within will look at you and say, I'll have what they're having. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you'll tune back in next week to continue cultivating a joyful mindset. Stay grateful, stay joyful, and have a fantastic day. Bye, friends.